Hello, welcome to another episode of this series on criminal law. This is Legal Advisors World. My name is Tim Francis, and here we answer your legal questions in the most simplified manner. Yes, so in our previous video, we started this series with an introduction to criminal law and the purpose of criminal law. I believe you learned one or two things. Today, we'll be discussing the history and sources of criminal law in Nigeria. Thank you for joining this video. Let's jump right into it. The history of criminal law in Nigeria dates back to the 19th century, yes, the early 20th century. In fact, the first criminal law, English criminal law that was introduced to Nigeria is dated around 1863, like the criminal law is dated 1863. And the first code that was introduced that was a criminal code to the north, to northern Nigeria was introduced around 1904 by Lord Frederick Lord Lugard, who was the then Governor General of the Caliphate, now called Nigeria. Yes, generally in Nigeria, there are two codes or there are two statutes, like I mentioned in our previous video, that governs criminal law. And those statutes are the Criminal Code, which we use in the South, and the Penal Code, which is used in the northern part of Nigeria. Yes, so that's what we can call like a short history of criminal law. Criminal law generally dates back from time immemorial. Yes, from time immemorial. People have been committing crimes and there's been punishment for crime and all of that. But coming back to Nigeria, what are the sources of criminal law in Nigeria? The sources of criminal law in Nigeria. The first source that I will mention is what I'll call received English criminal law. That's the English criminal law or common law of crime that we received from our colonial masters. Yes, they still apply in Nigeria today. That's the first. Secondly, another source of another statute that is considered a source of criminal law in Nigeria is the Constitution, because the Constitution is the source of all other laws in Nigeria. The Nigerian Constitution, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, is a source of Nigerian criminal law. A third source, like I mentioned, is the Criminal Code, the Criminal Code, the Criminal Code, and then a fourth source is the Penal Code. Yes, that's also a source. In fact, a primary enactment, which is a source for criminal law. Other sources include the Criminal Procedure Act, which was operating in the South, and criminal procedure law, which operated in states in the South. Yes, criminal procedure act, and then criminal procedure law in the states, criminal procedure act in the Federal High Court, National Industrial Court, up until 2015. And then in the North, they had the Criminal Procedure Code. The Criminal Procedure Code, yes, which we call CPC, it operated in the North. But in 2015, Nigeria enacted a new criminal legislation called the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. It was introduced in 2015 and it started operating as a source of criminal law in Nigeria, in federal courts. You can use it for criminal procedures. Yes. So, and at the state level, Lagos State led with Administration of Criminal Justice Law, I believe 2011, and then other states like Ekiti State, Anambra followed suit. A number of states actually have enacted their own Administration of Criminal Justice Law too, and they operate in those states. States that do not have their own ACJL still use the Criminal Procedure Law. Yeah, so it's either, well, depending on the state that you are, you have to find out if they have an Administration of Criminal Justice Law for that state or a CPL, a Criminal Procedure Law for the state. Other sources of criminal law in Nigeria is what we call judicial precedent. Case law can also be a source of criminal law in Nigeria. And also there are different statutes that can also be sources of criminal law, like the EFCC Act, NDLEA Act, ICPC Act. They deal with different kinds of crimes. For example, EFCC Act handle economic and financial crimes. Yes, NDLEA Act handles crimes that has to do with food, drugs, everything the NDLEA as an agency handles. So those statutes, they are also sources of criminal law. Yes, so if you pick them up, you open them, you will see crimes. Like I mentioned in the previous video, a crime must be written down. If it is not written down somewhere in a particular state in Nigeria, then it is not a crime in Nigeria. The only exception to that general rule, for every general rule, there is always an exception in law. The only exception to that general rule is the crime that is called contempt of court. So, like I said in the previous video, a crime must be written and like spelled out in a particular statute with its sanction following it, because if there's no sanction, then it's not even a law, not to even talk of criminal law. Yes, sanction is a crime. A law must have uh, coercion. Yes, it must have elements of sanction. So it must be able to, it must have a force to it. And the force is usually the sanctions, the penalties attached to it. But contempt of court as a crime is a crime, is recognized as a crime in Nigeria, but it is not, its sanctions are not literally spelled out anywhere. So if contempt of court is committed, the judge who the contempt has been committed against is at liberty to, just sentence the person to anyhow. Well, the judges, whatever a judge is doing too must be done with discretion and all of that. But I just want to put it out there, the contempt of court may be an exception to that general rule that a crime must be written somewhere, specified, and the sanctions and penalties specified. So you can't say, oh, maybe someone who has been held guilty of contempt in facie courier, or contempt ex facie courier, that's contempt in the face of the court, or contempt outside, committed outside the court. So someone who has been now arrested for contempt in facie courier cannot just say, oh, you can't punish me, or you can't do that because there's no way it is better that I have to stay 3 months in prison because of this. And that's an exception. But every other crime in Nigeria must be spelled out somewhere with sanctions spelled out. There's usually like even minimum and maximum for certain offenses, for especially offenses with jail time. So there may be a minimum, and offenses with fines too. There may be a minimum of this also number of years, or so number of months, maximum of so number of years, maximum of so number of months, or minimum of so amount, and maximum of so amount. So and then the judge may not have to use his discretion to on a case by case scenario to know where to pitch his sentence, whether with the minimum or in the middle or with the maximum sentence. But with all of this, with all that has been said and done, I think as an individual watching this video, you should make a decision to not to not find yourself in a situation where you have to commit a crime. Please do not commit crimes. Avoid crimes, right? If the crime has been committed around you, like I mentioned in the previous post, report it. Don't cover it. And if the crime has been committed against you, you can get justice at law. You can get redress at law. The person who has committed against you can be punished, and you can even take civil action and still get damages or compensation or an injunction or a specific performance for whatever has been done against you. So you may need to speak with a lawyer to be able, so that you can be properly guided on how to move forward and what to do. If you also need to take civil action, what your options are, and things like that. So thank you for watching today's video. I would like you to please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not. Please like this video. Please drop your comments in the comment section. Turn on the notification bell, please, so that you'll be notified every time we drop new videos. Thank you for watching, and call you blessed.